please ignore my flowers because they are very much on their last leg. They are like gasping for air. But you know what? It's fine. It's fine. Ignore them. Focus on me. Welcome back to the Pretty Bookish channel where we talk all things books all the time. My name is Nobu Kanya, your resident book nerd. Today I'm going to be wrapping up for you guys all the books that I read in, what month is it? March? All the books that I read in March. Not that many actually physical books. I think I have about 11 physical books. I think this is like the least books I've read in a month for at least the past like 5 or 6 months since I started doing wrap-ups. This is probably the least number of books that I've managed to finish. I don't know what happened, but this month, like, you know when you just like your brain just can't start moving. I read a lot of fantasy books and I managed to, okay, at least, you know, pops to me, I managed to clear quite a bit of my backlog. I cleared most of these books are books that I had bought last year, so I managed to clear some backlog, but I don't know, my body couldn't stop moving, my brain just was not in the vibe this month. So anyway, I have about 11 physical books that I'm gonna wrap up for you guys. I read about 5 ebooks, so yeah, and I'll probably talk about those in a second, but yeah, just wanted to start this wrap up and show you guys all the books that I read this month. Some quick admin before we start. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram on @prettyxbookish. Like, comment, follow, share, all that fun stuff. Jump in my DMs if you need something. You guys know the drill, and if you don't know the drill, watch enough videos so that you can also know the drill. Okay, guys, so my wrap-up video, as I was saying earlier, like, I really didn't read that many books this month, but the ones that I did read, I read a couple of good ones. If you follow me on Instagram, you know in my stories, especially one specific book, I was like freaking out. And another one, I read like 1 or 2 Bookstagram faves, and then I also managed to read a non-fiction book, 2 non-fiction books, which I was really happy about, and one of them is a writer who was the last of the writers who I said last year it was an embarrassment that I've never read them. I have finally read Roxane Gay, and the crowd goes wild. So, because last year I was saying that like Roxane Gay, Audre Lorde, and Octavia Butler were the 3 writers where I was just like, the fact that I've never read them was embarrassing. So last year I read Kindred, and then I read Sister Outsider. Was it last year? Yeah, I think it was last year. I think it was in December actually, or was it January this year? Anyway, I've read Sister Outsider, and so now the last one was Roxane Gay, and I actually did read her book. So actually, let's jump straight into it, seeing as we are doing a wrap up. One of the first books that I read this month, I think it was like the second book I read, was Hunger by Roxane Gay. I finally read a Roxane Gay book. I am really excited about that. I feel like I've accomplished something. Do you know what I mean? So Hunger is a memoir of my body. So Roxane Gay writes this harrowing memoir, by the way. It's so good. I really loved this book. She writes a memoir talking about how her relationship with her body, and talking about being fat in society, and also talking about how past traumas and kind of sexual assault at a really young age triggered a kind of disjointure with her body, and how that caused her to keep eating and eating and to piling food on top of the hurt, and trying to really like kind of self-soothe herself. And then she goes on to talk about how society treats fat bodies, and how people who are fat are treated so badly in society. And it's one of those books that like I could relate to a lot of this. And one thing that she says in this book that I just was just like, and I was actually talking to my mom about it, was how when you are fat, your body stops belonging to you, because everybody feels like they are entitled to have an opinion. People will stop you in the street to give you advice and to comment and to be like, don't you want to do this? People will be like, why are you eating this? Like, everybody becomes like a participant in your life, everybody, like strangers and family. And so it creates this disjointure between yourself and your body, because it stops being something that belongs solely to you. And I think that is something that is it's something I never really thought about like that. And I think even just in general, women as well, you have this experience of like, women's bodies don't belong to them. Everybody feels like they're entitled to say something about your body, and so you struggle to relate with yourself and to kind of isolate or kind of identify your own personal relationship with your body when everybody around you feels like it's also their prerogative. So I don't know, I just thought this book was really good. And you know what's a great companion to this book is one book that I say is one of my favorite books is Heavy by Kiesi Lemon, which talks about something similar, about how racism and kind of being a black man in America and being black in America, and how the ways that racism creates a kind of disjointer between you and your body, and how you start to look at your body as a threat even though it is your home. So anyway, those two books are great. And by the way, whoever recommended to me that I listen to the audiobook, thank you so much. I did listen to this on audio and I switched between the two, and the audiobook is fantastic because Roxane Gay reads it herself. So that's another thing. You guys know how I feel about memoirs, especially when they're read by the person who's actually memoiring. Is that a word? It's a word now. The person who's actually memoiring. So yes, Hunger by Roxane Gay was one of the first books I read. Really glad to have read that. Really, really loved it. Okay, so the next book that I read was actually the first book that I read this month, and it is a book that I have finally read. Do you guys know that I have never read before today? Before this month. Behold the Dreamers by Mbolo Mbwe. I think so many people have tagged me on Instagram in posts saying, oh my God, thank you so much for recommending this book. And I'm just like, I did not recommend that book to you because I ain't read it. I know I'm like an African lit lover and I seem to have read a lot of African lit books, but I ain't read it until now. But I finally read Behold the Dreamers by Mbolo Mbwe. Chef's kiss. It is 5 out of 5. I see why this book was so beloved. I see why it was an Oprah's book club book. I see why it consistently comes up. I think it came out, when did this book come out? It came out a while ago though, 2016. And I know, I can see why even still today it makes it on all these lists. It is so, so good. Okay, so it's a she's a Cameroonian writer. I'll tell you the names, Jende and his wife, Aneni. So he tells the story of Jende, who kind of immigrates to the US, and then he obviously finds a job, the typical immigrant experience, tries to find work, and then so he can bring his family over. And how living in the US, it speaks about how him living in the US, and he finds this job with this rich family, and how him and Neni get embroiled in this family's life, because Neni then at some point becomes like a part-time housekeeper and looks after this rich white family's kids, and then this white family is like Wall Street people. And then when the 2008, I think it's like the 2008 financial crash happens, and how all their lives are affected. But the thing I loved more than anything about this book is that Mbolo Mbwe does such an amazing job of unpacking or really giving you context to the kind of experience of immigrant men and the kind of weight of being responsible for looking after your family. And so I found Jende to be such a great character, and I think he is one of the most well-rounded black African male characters I have ever read. Because usually writers because a lot of the time, well, for me personally, a lot of the African that I read is written by women, and so a lot of the time black African men are painted in a particular light, and I think there's also a general narrative that pervades around them, super patriarchal, you know, oppressive, etc. However, this book is such a well-constructed and well-balanced representation of a black African man. I found Jende to be such a sympathetic character, even when he was dictating to Neni, and even when you saw her struggling with trying to be an independent woman and trying to participate in her life and her marriage, but bowing down to kind of societal and cultural pressures about that your husband is the one who decides everything to do with your family. You also just felt for Jende the whole time, because he wasn't portrayed as this like super villainy dictatorial guy. You saw him struggling with trying to do what's best for his family and trying to make the best decisions, and you saw him you just saw him go through so much. And I just thought this book it's just such a great, the character work is phenomenal. And I also felt like the ending was what I really, really loved about this book. I really loved the conversation it was having about not demystifying, contradicting or challenging this narrative that for everybody, going to America and staying in America is the dream, is the thing that is best for you and your family, that the West is the place that you will find happiness, and really thinking through what it means to be happy and what it means to find peace and what it means and what is your sense of self-worth and what is your happiness worth And I just, yeah, guys, Mbolambo's book, Behold the Dreamers, it was fantastic. I'm so glad I finally read it. I have ordered her new book, How Beautiful We Were, and I'm just looking forward to reading it. She's a phenomenal writer. So if you're looking for African lit writers, if you're looking for a Cameroonian writer, if you're just looking for a bang up story that has humor and has heart, it touches on so many incredibly important topics, and that centers a kind of African immigrant experience, Behold the Dreamers is fantastic. I really, really enjoyed that. So I highly, highly recommend that. Switching gears for a bit, the other book that I finally read this month was the second book in a series I started last year. I read Thunderhead by Neil Schusterman. It is the second book in the Scythe series. I loved Scythe. Last year I was just like, oh my god, it was so good. It's not my typical kind of book. So basically, basic plot line in Scythe, this is a society where death has been conquered. So there's this entity called the Thunderhead that kind of decides everything for everybody. And so there are people called Scythes who are basically like the Grim Reaper. So they are responsible for killing people, but it's like a sanctioned killing. So you get chosen to be a scythe, and then so that's how they do population control type situation, because everybody, death has been conquered. If you fall off a building, the Thunderhead will take you to a hospital and they'll revive you and you'll be out. So no one can actually die anymore. So now what happens in that book is that like the scythedom is going through like this tension of like new age scythes who really feel like death for them is like it's a fun thing to do. So they're just trying to kill people in the most extravagant, fun, like grand ways, and like really like psychopath type stuff, and the old guard who are like people who think it's just like it's a job, it's like whatever. So this book is a continuation of the story that started and kind of going on into this like internal workings of the scythedom. Okay, so Thunderhead, I thought like it was longer than it needed to be, I think, and it was like a little bit slow. It was a bit repetitive. It didn't have the same hit that Scythe had. I mean, obviously it's a book too, and maybe it's because I was already in the story, and Scythe for me was just so unexpectedly good. I mean, I'm gonna finish the series because it's one of those series that I really want to finish. It wasn't bad, but I don't know. I just thought this, like, it was a bit of a dip. And you know, this does happen with book 2 sometimes where they do hit a bit of a dip. So yeah, I read Thunderhead, and I'm looking forward to see what happens in the next book because I already have the toll. That's the closeout of the series. So hopefully I'll read that book in the next month or two and see what happens. But yeah, Thunderhead for me was a bit of a, was a bit shaky. Another book that I read that was also book 2 in a series that I want to finish, that I said on Instagram, bro, I finished this book. I still have got no idea what's going on. Still confused as hell. I read The Obelisk Skates by N.K. Jemisin. You guys know when I read 5th season last year, I was just like, this book is so good, but I actually have no idea what's going on. I am here to let you know that we are continuing on brand. This book is really good, but I have no idea what's going on. Like, you know, N.K. Jemisin writes these books where, like, I like the characters. I'm so intrigued. I'm so invested. But if you had to ask me what is happening in this sci-fi book, what is happening in this universe, I couldn't tell you a damn thing. What is happening with the Stone Eaters? What is happening with the scythedom, with the obelisks? What is happening with the season? I couldn't tell you not one thing. I don't know. I don't know. But everybody says The Stone Sky, which is the 3rd book, which is the closeout, well, actually a lot of stuff makes sense once you've finished. And I'm just like, Lord, I'm hanging on by hope and a prayer. And you know what? I'm giving it to Jesus. I'm just hoping that I will understand what is happening, because I actually did get The Stone Sky at the exclusive book sale. You guys know I'd be lucky like that. But I'm just, you know what? I read I'm here to tell you I read Obelisk Skates. It was great. Don't know what's going on. And onward we move. Do you know what I mean? Like, we work in hope. So hopefully when I read book 3, I'll know what's going on, because right now I don't. And then another book that I read that I loved, that I was talking about on social media because it raised my blood pressure so much, was His Only Wife by Peace Adzomedi, fam. When I say I need everybody to read this book, because I need us to all have a group chat, like a global group chat, and just be like, this is some bullshit. Like, so this book tells the story of a girl. Her name is no, her name is not Ellie. Afi. So Afi is this girl, and then her mom basically arranges this marriage to this guy named Ellie, who's like this rich guy in their village. His family is super well off, but the gag is that Ellie doesn't come to the wedding. She gets married in absentia. Then she gets sent to Accra. This is set in Ghana, where he lives, and she kind of gets there, and then you realize that like he has another girl, wife, another baby mama type situation. And so it's this whole narrative of like, I don't want to, okay, I don't want to say everything because a lot of the stuff is like happens during the narrative, but essentially what happens is that his family, you find out at the beginning that his family doesn't like the girl that he dated and his baby mama, and they think she's evil or whatever. So they want him to marry a nice girl that they can control so that they can kind of control Ellie as well. His mother is like doing all of this. And so now it's this whole book about how she gets there and then she's trying to be married to this guy and then she falls in love with him, and then it's just this whole saga because he's then not leaving the other woman, bro. And the wild things that happen in this book, like I wanted to beat Ellie with my shoe. I wanted to literally, not just a small shoe, I wanted to take my Timbs and smack him upside the head with my Timberlands. Like, do you know what? This book will raise your blood pressure if you're a black woman, especially a black African woman, because this stuff actually happens in real life, and you just realize that men are wild and they will never not be wild. And you just like reading this book, I just was just like, guys, do you know what? One of my best friend's favorite saying is like, men want us, if they will not be happy until we're all dead and buried in the ground. And this book made me like, you know what? That's 100% true. Like, until every woman is under the ground, like, straight men are not going to be happy. Like, that's what this book enforced for me. But anyway, in terms of the actual book, it moved quickly. The writing, I just thought it was way too short. By the way, that's a side note. It was 260 pages. It needed at least another 100 pages. I felt like there was more story to tell, more tea to spill. But anyway, it was really good. The cast of characters was good, and I loved this contemporary kind of romance, contemporary fiction set in Ghana. Remember how I said Ties That Tether was horrible for me? This is so much better because I think this is a book that definitely centers the kind of black cis experience of romance. Like, it's Ties That Tether was written for white people to understand, and it was written for the Canadian audience. This was written for an African audience. So many of the stuff you just hear, you just like roll your eyes, you chuck, you're just like, right, girl. Like, it's just, I don't know. I just love this book, and the cover's also beautiful. So definitely, if you guys are looking for something fun to read, if you're in the US this summer, but also in South Africa, if you're looking for something like fun to read, this is gonna be a good one. Like, it's gonna raise your blood pressure. It's gonna make you gasp. And yeah, anyway, so good. Love that one as well. The other book that I read was the nonfiction book that I finished this month, was Mediocre by Ijeoma Oluwa. The Dangerous Legacy of White Male Power. I finally read this book. So I liked it. I didn't love it. It's not my favorite anti-racist or whatever book. I do think though that, first of all, disclaimer, or not really a disclaimer, it's very much rooted in US history. So obviously Ijeoma Oluwa is American, she's African American, and so she's writing from that experience. So if you're not American, it's interesting, but it doesn't hit the same. Because I think as much as like white male supremacy is a global problem, there are culturally and geographically specific nuances depending on the history of your country. So South Africa's relationship with white men and white men in South Africa, it's a slightly different conversation to kind of white male power in the US, because the history is slightly different. The ideological background is slightly different. So where you're talking about the Ku Klux Klan and kind of Christian masculinity, and you're talking about all this stuff, in South Africa you would be talking about the myth of the fur trackers. You would be talking about different things. So I think that for Americans this book is really good. I also like how she really zeroes in on unpacking white male supremacy and the myth surrounding kind of white male dominance. I think a lot of the time the anti-racist books that I've read are written predominantly with the view of like showing how black women and black people of color are disenfranchised. I think this book is like, it takes a slightly different stance in that it kind of unpacks the kind of psychology almost of like the myth around white male. So it talks about stuff like the founding of the Ku Klux Klan. It talks about the Wild Wild West. That's one of my favorite chapters, the myth around the Wild Wild West and this kind of pioneers America type situation, and how that myth that myth and Christian masculinity kind of fused together to create this very weird space, right? It also talks about the NFL, which I found was an interesting chapter, and about how kind of the dynamics of these kind of black players, majority like 60% black players or 70%, who put their bodies on the line, who break their bodies so that like white team owners can become billionaires, it kind of reminiscent of slavery. And it's reminiscent of a very exploitative relationship. And I found that really interesting. And then there's also a chapter that speaks about Bernie Sanders that I said in my Instagram review I found incredibly important, because I personally have never liked Bernie. There was something about him I just didn't enjoy. And that chapter really explores how the parallels between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump actually exist, and how people ignore how Bernie Sanders' politics is not as progressive as you think it is, because it's very much rooted in the kind of ideology of the working class. But the working class he encompasses or kind of imagines as the ideal candidate is usually white men. Because if you are black, the conversation about race, and if you're a woman, the conversation about gender cannot be extricated from the conversation about the economy, about class. And Bernie's politics is always surrounding this issue of, or it's kind of this whole idea of, okay, yeah, guys, stop talking about racism and stuff, because it's not really that important. What you should really be talking about is class. And it's just like these two, all of these things work together. So anyway, I thought this book was really interesting. I found it interesting, but I definitely feel like if you're looking for more serious unpacking of like racist dynamics from other parts of the world, it's not going to help you that much. Also, I think there are maybe better books, but I thought like if you've read other anti-racist books, this is definitely a different approach. So yeah, I found that interesting as well. Another book that I read is the next book in a series that I absolutely loved. I told you guys when I finished the Poppy War that I needed to take a break. Well, I'm back with a bang. I read The Dragon Republic this month. Do you know what? R.F. Kuang, Shonda Rhimes, same gent, it's the same person. Do you know when I don't give a fuck as a person? That is R.F. Kuang in this book, because please tell me who she didn't kill. Like, that's what I'm gonna say, is that like she didn't care, not one damn. You love somebody, they did. And it's just like, oh, okay, I can't really talk about this book. It's actually gonna make me cry again. Like, it's a lot. Again, this series is phenomenal. And also Rin is a bad bitch. Like, I'll keep saying that till I die. Like, Rin is she's not the MC that you guys are used to. Like, she's extra. So I really love this book. And the ending. Bro, when I finished this, I remember when I was saying on Instagram, I was saying, like, I'm ready to be the burning god. And quite frankly, I'm ready for Rin to burn all of that shit to the ground. Like, if you read the series, you know what I mean. At the end of this book, you're just left like, you know what, Rin, burn it all to the ground. Like, because the psych, bro. Like, you know what? Nah, burn it to the ground. Like, I'm done with everybody. I'm done with all of it. That's what I'm gonna say. Oh, and also, I love how the Hesperians, I think the Hesperians, which is basically like the white people, the representation of the West kind of was more dominant and had a bigger part in this book. So the race relations and the conversation around the history of China, because if you guys don't know, this series is kind of loosely based on the histories of China. And talk about the West infiltrating and stuff like that. It was kind of fed in there. So you kind of got a history lesson while having some action adventure. A lot of blood, a lot of gore, and more disembowelments. So, you know, anyway, Dragon Republic, you're gonna cringe and cry at the same time. So absolutely loved it. Okay, so another book that I read this month, which is a book that I've had for 6 million years, so you know, finally read it, is A Curse of let's try that again. A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. It is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, basically, set in like modern retelling, reimagining. Guys, when I read this book, I literally thought to myself, this is a Court of Thorns and Roses. I did not realize how much A Court of Thorns and Roses is basically like Beauty and the Beast in a way. This book and A Court of Thorns and Roses, the plot line is almost exactly the same. It is like, there are some subtle differences, but it's almost identical. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was pretty good. I am going to get the second book in the series because, you know what, I actually really liked it. I thought it's a nice series. I definitely think if you're someone who liked The Court of Thorns and Roses and you're looking for something similar, I liked Harper, I liked Ren, I liked Grey as well. And the ending of this book, I think, sets up the series, because now you're really interested in how it's going to progress and how it's going to go forward. Do you know what I mean? It's not groundbreaking, the series. It's not like your mind is not going to be blown, but it is something like if you're looking for a series to start that's actually pretty good and you want something to read and something characters to like and characters to get into. I really liked Harper. I also like this book because it has great disabled rep. Harper has a disability. She I can't remember what it is. She has a genetic disorder. I can't remember which one it is, but anyway, but the thing I like about the way that it's discussed in this book is that like you can see some of the issues that she has, like in terms of like her foot and like, but it's not made a central topic, and it also isn't like shown as this like huge debilitating thing, and you see her really like living with her disability. So I really liked that about this book as well. So that's also a change, because it's nice to see main characters who are not just like a random skinny white girl, able-bodied straight skinny white girl. So yeah, because so dark and lonely, and I also think she's a little bit thick if I was reading correctly. Anyway, the next book that I read is also a book, it's a Bookstagram fave that I finally read, that you guys watched me read on Instagram. I have finally read From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, depending on how you actually say that name, because I still can't say it. Wow, guys, so From Blood and Ash. Okay, so I can't talk about this book because there's so many, everything that I was just like, what the is a spoiler. And I gave spoiler warnings on Instagram when I spoke about this, but I just want to say, look, it's good. It's just so long, guys. Like, this book is like 600 pages. It should have been 400 pages, and that would have been enough. But I like Poppy. What's his name? What's the guy's name? Hawk. I like Poppy. I like Hawk. I like the world building. No, I didn't like the world building. I'm lying. The world building was a bit convoluted. It was a bit confusing. It was happening in a very staggered way. There were like chunks of it, and she didn't fuse the world building and the story really well together, to be honest. But fine, the world that's created is a bit confusing, but onward we move, and I'm hoping book 2 will be slightly less confusing. I like Poppy, I like Hawk. Poppy and Hawk together. My eyebrows were raised like quite a lot, guys. I can't do that like one eyebrow thing. I wish I could, because I was gonna do it now. Anyway, like my eyebrows were raised. There's also the scene towards the end in the barn, and then after the barn where I was just like, this is some bullshit. I don't know, like, this book is just, it's wild. A lot of wild stuff happens, and everybody says it's super sexy and super smutty. I hear you, but also some of the like sex scenes and some of the like more intimate stuff, I was just shaking my head like, what in the tomfoolery is going on here? But anyway, I see why people like this book, but I personally just feel like it's just way too long. It is good, but it's just way too long. So I am definitely going to read the rest of the series, because now I'm hella intrigued, especially towards the end. The ending, I was just like, the last two, like 150 pages of fire. Like, it moved so quickly. It was just like the first 400 pages that were too slow. So yeah, okay, so then the other book that I read, which is one of my backlist books that I've been thinking I wanted to read for so long, I have finally read Pachinko by Minjin Lee, and it was chef's kiss. It was absolutely brilliant. It was so good, guys. It was so good. It is just this, I wrote an Instagram review, so check that out as well. I'll try and put a link in my bio, in the description box of that review, because I really think I got my articulated myself well there. But it's just the sweeping narrative, like it's like almost a century and this family, and it's just I'm so impressed with the writing of this book. I don't know how Minjin Lee managed to fit so much in this book and make it still deep and make it still, you know how when I talk about The Vanishing Half with you guys and I said it was, okay, to be fair, this book is like 200 pages longer than The Vanishing Half, so but she went wide, but she also went deep, like, and she managed to do that because the character work is superb in this book. Her characters really embody so many different elements of Korean and Japanese society and the experience of being a Korean immigrant, and it's really, you get so much from this book because, yeah, Senja, Kyangi, Muzazu, like Noah, I love this book. I really feel like I see why everybody always raves about it and recommends it so much. So I really feel like if you're looking for something historical fiction, Asian historical fiction, wow, I can't speak. Asian historical fiction, this book is phenomenal. So definitely get that. Then the last physical book that I read this month, I finished like the day before the end of the month, was I finally read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. It is a retelling, a reimagining of the story of Romeo and Juliet set in 1920s Shanghai. Between the Tsai family, Juliet Tsai, and Roma Montagovs. I think the Montagovs are Russian. So it's these feuding gangs set in Shanghai, and then this whole illness or this madness, this monster strikes Japan. Nana, why can you not speak English? What is happening? Okay, it strikes Shanghai, and then basically people get infected, and then people are tearing their own throats out. It's very like apocalyptic, very zombie-esque. And then set against that is Juliet and Roma trying to discover who the monster is and cure the madness. And also it's this like whole Romeo and Juliet thing. So did I like it? I thought it was good. I liked it. I just think that there is almost no romance to speak of in this book. So it's just one of those things where it's just like, it's Romeo and Juliet. So I'm not really sure. Like, there's like maybe one kiss, very little like, I mean, you get the understanding that Juliet and Roma have history and they're in love with each other. Fine. But, like, there's no stolen moments. There's no, like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's none of that. Like, there's so much animosity. This is more or less a crime novel with just, like, a little bit of Romeo and Juliet. You know what I mean? It just felt like a crime novel. And don't get me wrong, like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't what I expected. The book wasn't at all what I expected. I am definitely going to read book 2 because I'd like to see how it progresses, because it's a duology, so book 2 will be the final book. But I will say that I wish she'd done more with the romance. The writing was also weirdly dense in some places, if that makes sense. It was, like, overwritten in some places, but, like, yeah. I don't know, but I will say that I really like the cast of secondary characters. Marshall, I like Benedict, I like Kathleen. I feel like Rosalind is going to do something wrong. I can feel it in my bones. But I really like the secondary characters, like the kind of cousins and whatever. You guys have read Romeo and Juliet. You know how they, whatever. So I liked Juliet. I liked Roma. There was just something that just didn't come together 110%. But yeah. Would I recommend this book to people? I mean, I personally wouldn't be like, you have to read it, but I feel like if you want to read it, you can. It's not something I'd rave about. Like, I tell you, like, go read Legendborn. Like, I'll keep saying this to you again. Raybearer, Legendborn, read him. But I thought this book was pretty good. So yeah, I liked it. Yeah, I liked it. I just didn't absolutely love it, if that makes sense. Okay, right. That is the end of this wrap-up video. These are the 11 books that I actually physically read. I read some ebooks, but you know what? I actually just don't feel like talking about them right now. They're all like queer romance, like these really short novellas that I read on my Kindle. So I don't really feel like I need to get into all of that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. That is my wrap up. Those are the books that I read. As I said to you guys, pretty short reading month. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram. I'm at PrettyXBookish. Like, comment, follow, share, all that fun stuff. You guys know the drill. I hope you guys loved this video. What else do I want to say? Nothing, actually. Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoy your day. Goodbye.